If you've ever tried to read about neurodegenerative diseases, you probably felt like you were drowning in a sea of acronyms. It's a lot. It feels like a secret code, right? Well, today, we're going to crack that code. I mean, look at this list: FTD, PSP, CBD, ALS. It's a total alphabet soup. For the longest time, even for doctors, figuring out where one disease ended and another began was, well, it was blurry. But what if all that confusion? What if it was all because we were just looking at the problem from the wrong angle? Let's get into it. So, for a long time, the thinking was pretty simple, right? One bad protein causes one specific disease. You get protein A, you get disease A. Makes sense. But it turns out that's just not the full picture. The new reality, the thing that's changing everything, is so much cooler. It's not just about what protein is causing the trouble, it's about where in the brain that trouble is happening. And that leads us to this one single idea that if you take anything away from this, it should be this. In the brain, topography is destiny. That's it. Location is everything. You can have the exact same misbehaving protein, but depending on which neighborhood in the brain it decides to camp out in, you get completely different diseases with totally different symptoms. It's wild. Okay, so let's make this real. Let's look at a case study, starting with a protein you've probably heard about, tau. Tau is a huge deal in a bunch of these diseases, but the thing is, it's not a one-trick pony at all. Okay, look at this. This chart just lays it out so perfectly. Just focus on those top 3 rows for a second. The protein causing the problem? It's tau, every single time. But look at the result. You get 3 completely different diseases: PSB, CBD, Pick's disease. How? I mean, how is that even possible? Well, you guessed it. It's all about where that tau is setting up shop. So let's break this down. If tau clumps up in the brainstem in these deep nuclei, boom, you get PSP. And the classic sign is trouble with eye movements. Now, what if that exact same tau protein decides to build up over here in the cortex and basal ganglia, but only on one side? Well, then you get CBD, and you see this really distinct one-sided movement disorder. And then if that same tau ends up in the frontal and temporal lobes, you've got Pick disease, which can start with really sudden big personality changes. It's incredible, right? The same exact protein, but 3 totally different stories. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's cool, but maybe that's just a weird thing tau does. Nope. It's not a one-off. This same exact rule, remember, topography is destiny, it applies to another big-time player in brain disease, a protein called TDP43. So let's go back to our chart, but this time look at the bottom 2 rows. Now the protein is TDP43, but the story, it's exactly the same. One protein, but depending on where it piles up, you get 2 completely different diseases. And this just shows it so clearly. If TDP43 builds up in the temporal lobes, that's kind of like the brain's dictionary encyclopedia. You get something called semantic dementia. People start to lose the meaning of words. They can't recognize common objects. But if that same TDP43 protein attacks the motor neurons in the cortex instead, you get FTLD, which is this really tough combination of cognitive problems and physical muscle weakness. Again, same protein, but the location it hits determines everything. Okay, so this is all really fascinating science, I get it. But so what? What does this actually mean for people, for patients, for doctors in the real world? Why does it matter so much that topography is destiny? And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? The answer is, it changes everything. It completely changes how we approach diagnosis. And even more exciting, it changes how we think about treating these diseases down the road. This is where it gets really practical. We can actually use this knowledge right now. So we know that when tau hits the brainstem, it messes with eye movements. So we can run a simple test that measures how fast someone's eyes move up and down. That little test can give us a huge clue about whether we're dealing with a tau disease or a TDP43 disease. And why does that matter? Because there are drugs being developed right now that only target tau. You have to know which protein you're fighting. Same thing for telling FTD apart from Alzheimer's. A different eye test can help with that, and you have to know the difference because the treatments are totally different. Okay, let's talk about a big one that trips a lot of people up: FTD versus Alzheimer's. On the outside, early on, they can look kind of similar, but when you look under the hood, they are completely different beasts. So a frontotemporal dementia caused by tau, like the PSP we talked about, that's just a tau problem. And it starts in the brainstem, which is why you see movement problems first. Alzheimer's, though, that's a two-protein problem. You've got amyloid and tau. And it starts in a totally different place, the hippocampus, the brain's memory hub, which is exactly why the first thing you notice is memory loss. See? Different proteins, different locations, different diseases. So all of this leads us to what's next. And honestly, this is where it gets really, really exciting. This new way of thinking is pushing us past just looking at static pictures of the brain or moving towards something way more dynamic. The huge leap forward is this. We're shifting from looking at the brain's blueprints, its structure, to watching the brain in action, its function. Think about it. We're realizing we can spot the problem by measuring what the brain is doing, or more importantly, what it's struggling to do, way, way before the damage is bad enough to even show up on a standard MRI scan. And that brings us back to the eyes. This is why measuring eye movements is such a game changer. It's like having a direct, live feed into the health of the brainstem. We know the brainstem is ground zero for tau in a disease like PSP. So if we can measure how well the eyes are moving, we're getting a real-time report on how that part of the brain is functioning. It's an early warning signal, a clue that shows up long before other things go wrong. And that gives us a precious window to maybe, just maybe, do something about it. So next time you hear that jumble of letters, FTD, PSP, CBD, don't get lost in the soup. Just remember that one powerful idea. Topography is destiny. And maybe, just maybe, the key to solving this incredibly complex protein puzzle won't be found in some giant multi-million-dollar machine, but could actually be hidden in the blink of an eye.